Welcome to Forage. On this show, our team of foragers will be showing you what you can use as food and as medicine. We'll be showing you how to cook and store these items, things that you would have walked past every day thinking they might have been weeds. We'll also be meeting the people who are on the front line of protecting our planet, working to secure the biodiversity that gives us the fresh air we breathe, the clean water we drink, and the nutritious food that we eat. Being out in nature is so good for your physical and your mental well-being. We're hoping this show will inspire you to get outside more, maybe put down your phones, put on your wellies and get foraging. Mike's a local forager. He's been out in the forest looking for mushrooms. It seems like you've got a healthy stack there, my friend.
I have indeed, mate. So I've got here a cauliflower fungus, and you can see why it's called a cauliflower fungus, because it does look very similar to a cauliflower. This one is a little bit old, but I will still be using it. I will be pickling some of it, and then I'll be drying the rest and grinding that into powder to use as a seasoning in my cooking. I've got some porcini or penny bun mushrooms, and I also have some babeletes, which are closely related to ceps, but not quite as sought after, not quite as good, but still a good mushroom.
I've tried to go out and look for mushrooms. This is the simplest way I sort of call them, fungi. But where do you start? Because I'm in a field and I'm seeing different mushrooms, and obviously, you know, like, well, my mum almost died actually from poison from a mushroom. But where would you start?
I would start by finding someone in your local area that is a recognised guide, someone that has a reputation as a good fungi guide, and get them to take you out and show you to start with. I'd also recommend getting some books to assist you in your learning. Learning about fungi is quite difficult compared to learning about plants, because lots of fungi are very, very similar to each other, and it's very, very easy to get confused between them.
Because a good motto that you've mentioned to me in the past was, you know, if in doubt,
leave it out.
Yeah, because you know, I don't have any knowledge of fungi at all, but it's not something to muck around with, right? You can really cause yourself some damage.
No, and a question that I and other foragers often ask people at the beginning of a foraging walk is, what's the worst thing that could happen when you go foraging? And they say something like, you can eat something poisonous and die, and that's very, very true. But there are things worse than that. You could actually feed them to someone that you love, someone that you care about. You don't know what they are, and you end up damaging or killing someone that you care about is even worse than harming yourself. So they're not to be trifled with, that's for sure. You need to really know what you're looking at. There's a famous forager who's inspired me over the years called Robin Harford, and he has a saying that you should be as familiar with something that you're going to forage as you are with a pint of milk on the shelf in the shop. So that's the kind of familiarity that you're looking for before you actually go and pick something. And that's not to try and dissuade people from doing it, but it is a process that takes quite a while to get your eye in on what you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, so you've got some great specimens in there. We could actually use those later. We're going to be cooking some things that we've found today. We could use those as part of the recipe, maybe, Mike.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you.
Look, we've got some acorns here.
So you can actually use acorns?
Yeah, so acorns at one point in history would have been a really, really valuable food source, but they require a lot of processing, which is probably why they've kind of fallen out of favour.
What do you make with them?
So essentially, once we've leached the tannins out, so the tannins are the toxins that we have to, you can cold leach or hot leach to remove the tannins, but as soon as they're out, you can use them like any other kind of nut. So you can dry them and grind them down into a flour and then make cakes, pancakes, bread. So traditionally the way of leaching them would have been, they'd have buried a pit next to some kind of running water, and you'd have buried your acorns in that pit for up to a year, and the wet earth would have drawn out all of those tannins, and then literally like a squirrel, you'd have to remember where you dug and like put your acorns, and you'd have to return to that spot, dig them all out, and then you could use your acorns, so you wouldn't have to wait a while.
For the planet to provide the rich abundance that we set out to forage, the soils need to be fertile and ecosystems need to work in harmony so that all things can grow and flourish. Human impact on the environment has caused a massive reduction in the fertility of our soils and a loss in biodiversity and ecosystem harmony. During this series, we'll be meeting people working tirelessly to change this. Our first environmentalist is Fran Southgate from the Sussex Wildlife Trust. Fran's current environmental work includes rewilding projects that aim to return the land to its natural rhythms and increase biodiversity. So I'm here with Fran from Sussex Wildlife Trust at a nature reserve somewhere in West Sussex. And I'm not going to lie to you, Fran, when I was walking around here a few months ago, all I could see was grass and a few bushes that probably needed cutting back. But after you showed us around, the place really came to life. So just wonder if you could let me know what exactly is happening here and what initiatives are you doing at this site?
So this is land in recovery, really. It was previously quite intensively farmed, and we've had it in our ownership for about 20 years. And it's nature restoring itself with a little bit of help from us. So what you're seeing is the natural process of the grasses and the other herbs coming in, and the regeneration of patches of scrub which are thorny, and they then allow trees to grow through them. They act as kind of almost a tree shelter, so that trees get protected from browsing. And slowly you're getting this formation of a really lovely mosaic of habitat, which is helped along a bit by grazing, but not a huge amount else.
Since Sussex Wildlife Trust took over this nature reserve in the 1980s, many plant and animal species have come back. Primrose, adder's tongue fern and over 1,000 species of fungi have been recorded here, as well as colonies of the rare barberstale and Bechstein bat. The rewilding project at this nature reserve has been so successful that it's now been named a site of special scientific interest. Rewilding is something you hear more of at the moment, which is great. What exactly is rewilding and how does it increase biodiversity?
I think rewilding is really just allowing nature to lead its own recovery. It's removing as much human impact or intervention as you can and putting in what we call natural processes, so the things that nature would do to recover itself, rather than us as humans feeling like we always need to intervene and manage. Rewilding is a sort of route of rediscovery for us, because I think we've degraded our planet so much that we've just forgotten what wild and natural is. And so through rewilding we have been able to find out a whole load of new information about where species want to live.
As a species, humanity thinks we often know best in terms of environmental management. Do you think we need to listen to the environment more going forwards?
Yeah, I think perhaps we've maybe lost our intuition around our place in nature and our connection with nature. We rely a lot on science and a lot on our management plans and things like that, and we've forgotten that maybe we would in the past have created our own connection through a very long depth of experience, and a sort of a knowing and a learning with nature. And I think that's something that we need to learn again, is to have that deep intuition of what is good for us and what is good for nature, and to start listening to that again.
So here's a hot topic at the moment, and so it should be, that we're losing biodiversity at a rate never seen before as a species. With over 1 million plant and animal species facing extinction, we're definitely heading towards an ecological catastrophe. People at home sat watching TV, they might think that they're outside of this system, safe in their houses, but it's down to biodiversity that we can breathe fresh air, drink clean water and eat some level of nutritious food. If people at home wanted to do more, any advice to them about what they could do to help with this, what is a fight now?
Yeah, I think what tends to happen with these huge things like climate change is people just feel completely powerless. How can one person in their living room make an impact on climate change? But we really can. You know, there's what, 60 something million people in Britain. If they all just use 1 litre less of water a year, that's 60 million litres less of water a year we're using. We really communally have a massive impact that we can communally reduce at a vast rate if we have the desire to do so. And I think things like the recent pandemic have really shown us how important the connection with nature is, how much we value it. Yeah, we really can have an impact, and it does come down eventually just to individual choice.
Well, thanks for all your time, Fran, and definitely keep up with good work. We're going to go and see what Fern and Mike have found, our foragers.
So I picked some of this lovely yarrow. So its Latin name is Achillea milfolium, and milfolium literally means a million leaves. You can see why. It's a super fluffy little herb. And Achillea relates to Achilles, the Greek hero. And the story goes that when he was a baby, he was dipped into a potion made of yarrow while being held by his heel. And that's why the only part of his body that wasn't impervious to wounds was that heel that hadn't touched the yarrow. And that's because yarrow is a well-known wound healer. So it literally would have been used before our modern medicine, ground down into a paste and packed into any cuts or wounds to help heal that part of the body up. So it's got loads of amazing qualities. It's quite often prescribed for a common cold or a fever, and it's also great for kind of menstrual regulation, menstrual cramps and things like that as well. Yeah. So just a perfect little addition to a tea, really.
So is there anything else that it looks similar to that foragers should be aware of that might be harmful to them?
Yeah, there's nothing particularly dangerous if you're sure you've got yarrow, and some really good ways to go about it is just to always make sure you've got little opposite pairs of these fluffy leaves. So you want to almost make sure that you've got kind of like a flat leaf rather than walls of branches that kind of come circularly around the main stem. The other thing to note as well is it just shouldn't be a herb that's consumed by pregnant women, so it's definitely one to look out for.
Foraging is what once would have been called existing. Our ancestors wouldn't have had supermarkets and would have needed a deep understanding of what was around them to survive. This relationship with nature has now been lost, but trained foragers like Mike and Fern are bringing back this knowledge so that we can better understand why this relationship is so important.
So Mike, you've got some berries here, my friend. Are these edible?
This is one of my favourite native shrubs. It's called a hawthorn tree, and it has edible berries. It also has edible leaves and edible flowers, but that's something that you get more in the springtime. When the leaves are nice and fresh and still see-through, you can actually eat these leaves. And you can use the flowers, which have a really nice kind of almond scent to them, so I use them to flavour syrups and things like that. But what we're looking at today is these berries here, and these berries are actually very, very high in a substance called pectin, which helps jams and jellies and things like that to set. On their own, they're not that amazing in my opinion, but when you use them in large quantity to make a product like something like a hawthorn ketchup, they're actually really, really tasty.
So if people are out foraging, I see a lot of red berries when I'm out and about. Is there anything that foragers should watch out for which might be similar that aren't too good for them?
Yes, there are. There are several trees that have red berries on them, and you really need to learn the individual features of any one tree before you're going to start foraging from it. So you'd need to learn the leaf shape and the general features of the tree before you start foraging for hawthorn. But there are two plants in particular that I tell people to watch out for, and those are white and black bryony. So those are both climbing plants.
So hawthorn, Mike, I think you mentioned you can use it for a sauce, but yeah, is there anything else you can use these for?
Yes, it does have other uses. It actually has medicinal properties to it as well. So herbalists have been using this plant for a long time to prescribe as a heart medicine, and it turns out that it is actually very high in certain compounds which are beneficial to the heart, flavonoid compounds such as one in particular called rutin. So yeah, it has benefits medicinally. It's also really, really good for our native wildlife. It's a native tree, it supports a lot of insects, it supports birds, mammals, and it's just really, really good all-round tree for the wild habitat in this country. It also has a really good grain to the wood, so if you actually manage to get hold of some of the wood, if a tree's been cut down for any reason, it's very, very nice for carving, and it makes excellent firewood as well, burns really hot.
A key point in our species evolution is when we learnt to cook with fire. The heat from fire allowed us to obtain more energy from the food that we gathered. Now we're going to show you how we're going to cook and prepare all the things that we foraged today. Hi Mike, what you got for us?
We're going to make some very simple mushroom fritters with the mushrooms that I was showing you earlier on. Just going to slice those up, dip them in some egg and use a combination of plain flour and acorn flour.
To prepare the acorns for use, we used the hot leach method. The acorns were shelled, then boiled in 4 changes of water to remove their bitter tannins. These were then dehydrated and ground into a fine flour.
To dip them in, fry them in some oil on the fire. Here is a little sauce that I've made out of some of the ingredients that we've looked at today. This is a little dipping sauce, and it's made with hawthorn and rose hips and a little bit of honey and a little bit of chilli and some vinegar in there as well. Very, very simple. And we're just going to use that to dip our mushroom fritters into.
Once gathered, the hawthorn berries along with some rose hips were boiled in water and cider vinegar with some dried chilli. The berries were then strained through a sieve to retain the pulp, which was sweetened with honey to make a sweet chilli hedgerow dipping sauce.
Right, now on to the favourite bit of the forage. So one of the most interesting things about foraging is, there's things around you that you might just see as weeds, and those things have actual really beautiful properties. So Mike's just found something right beneath our feet that he's going to talk to us about.
Yeah, I've got a little herb here. It's called herb Bennett or wood avens. Geum urbanum is the scientific name for it, and it's a member of the rose family, so it's actually related to hawthorn, to roses, to lots of other wild food plants. And it contains eugenol, which is clove oil. So it's about 60% of the strength of clove oil that you get from regular cloves. And you can use it for all the same things that you would use cloves for. So you can use it in cooking, and you can also use it as a medicine. If you've got a toothache or something like that, you can just chew on one of these roots and get some relief from it. I tend to use it for cooking. So I will clean the roots up and then I'll either dry them and powder them and then use that in different dishes like curries and things like that, or I will flavour syrups with it, or one of my favourite things to do with it is to pack the roots into a bottle and then pour rum on top and make my own spiced rum.
When foraging for roots, it should be noted that landowners' permission should be obtained before harvesting the root of any wild plant.
Thanks for foraging with us this week, guys. Join us next week, we'll be on a coastal forage. Also meeting the people that are helping to re-establish a kelp forest off the Sussex coast.